Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The champagne flute didn't just break. It exploded against the Italian marble wall, a shower of crystal shrapnel that perfectly mirrored the sudden, violent destruction of my carefully constructed life. You will sign the papers, Julian, and you will do it before the gala ends tonight. My father's voice was not a shout, but a low, subterranean rumble that vibrated through the floorboards of the penthouse office. He stood by the panoramic window, his silhouette cutting through the skyline of the city he believed he owned. The Vane legacy requires blood. It requires a legitimate heir. I am done waiting for you to grow out of your deviations. I stared at the shattered glass, my reflection fragmented in a dozen sharp shards. Deviations, I repeated, the word tasting like bile. Is that what you call 5 years of loyalty? I doubled our stock price. I expanded Vane Industries into 3 new continents. And yet, I am reduced to stud horse status because you want a photo op with a baby. Silas Vane turned, his face a mask of granite, etched with the cruel lines of a man who had never heard the word no. He tossed a heavy folder onto the mahogany desk. It landed with a dull, menacing thud. Elena Vance. The merger with her family's shipping empire is contingent on the marriage, and the production of an heir within 18 months. He paused, his eyes narrowing into predatory slits. And if you refuse, I will burn the one thing you think you've hidden from me. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate for flight. I don't know what you're talking about. Kieran, Silas said. The name hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Kieran Graves, the corporate fix-it man. The gutter rat you've been keeping in that loft in the meatpacking district. Silas smiled, a cold, bloodless expression. I have men watching him right now. Sign the marriage contract, impregnate the girl, and your pet lives. Refuse, and he suffers an unfortunate accident. A mugging gone wrong. Tragedy in the city. The heir left the room. My hands, usually steady enough to sign billion-dollar acquisitions, trembled. This was the trap. This was always how it ended with Silas Vane. You wouldn't, I whispered, though I knew he would. Try me. The rain in the city felt less like water and more like ice, sheeting down in gray curtains as I drove. I shouldn't have been going to him. It was reckless. If Silas's men were watching, I was leading the target right to the bullseye. But logic had abandoned me the moment his name left my father's lips. Kieran's loft was a converted industrial space, raw concrete and exposed brick, filled with the scent of old paper and coffee, the scent of him. I bypassed the security code, my fingers slipping on the keypad, and burst through the heavy steel door. Kieran was there, standing by the kitchen island, a stark contrast to the chaos inside me. He was wearing a simple black t-shirt that clung to the lean, dangerous muscle of his frame, his dark hair falling messy over eyes that were the color of steel wool. He looked up, a half-smile forming, until he saw my face. The smile died instantly. Julian. I crossed the room in 3 strides, colliding with him, my hands gripping his arms, checking him for injuries, for broken bones, for bullet holes. Are you okay? Did anyone approach you? Did you see anyone outside? Hey. Kieran's voice was a low anchor in the storm. He grabbed my wrists, his grip firm, grounding me. I'm fine. Nobody is here. Breathe. I collapsed against him, burying my face in the crook of his neck. He smelled of rain and sandalwood soap. He knows. I choked out. Silas knows. He wants me to marry Elena Vance. He wants a grandchild. He threatened to kill you if I don't comply. I felt Kieran's body tense, the muscles in his back turning to iron. For a long moment he didn't speak. He just held me, his hands stroking the back of my head, a soothing rhythm that belied the violence I knew he was capable of. Kieran wasn't just a lover. He was a survivor. We had met as enemies. He was a corporate saboteur hired to dismantle a subsidiary I was managing. I had caught him, cornered him, and instead of turning him in, I had been captivated by the sheer, brilliant audacity of his mind. We had spent 5 years playing a game of chess that turned into a war, and then, inevitably, into a love so consuming it terrified me. "So," Kieran said softly, pulling back just enough to look me in the eye, "the Emperor demands an heir. He gave me until tonight. The gala." Kieran released me and walked to the window, peering through the blinds. "If you marry her, he wins. You'll be miserable. You'll become him. If I don't, you die," I countered, my voice cracking. "I can't lose you, Kieran. I'd rather burn the company to the ground than see you hurt." Kieran turned back, his eyes dark and unreadable. He walked over to a loose floorboard near the bookshelf, pried it open, and pulled out a small, encrypted drive. "You remember why your father never fired me when I first infiltrated your company? Why he let me disappear instead of prosecuting? Because you had leverage," I said. "Dirt on the senators he bribed. That was the appetizer," Kieran said, tossing the drive in his hand. "This is the main course. I've spent the last 5 years digging Julian, just in case. I knew this day would come. Your father doesn't just want an heir for legacy. He needs one to secure the Vance Trust Fund. Vane Industries is insolvent. He's broke. He's been cooking the books for a decade." My jaw dropped. "Insolvent? That's impossible. The quarterly reports are fiction," Kieran finished. "He needs the Vance dowry to cover the holes before the SEC catches on. That's why he's desperate. That's why he threatened to kill me. He's a cornered animal." Kieran stepped closer, cupping my face in his rough, warm hands. "We don't run, Julian. We don't hide. We end him." "How?" "We go to the gala," Kieran said, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "And we give him exactly what he deserves." The Vane annual gala was a display of grotesque opulence. The ballroom was draped in gold and velvet, filled with the city's elite, all drinking champagne that cost more than most people's rent. I stood at the edge of the dance floor, wearing a white tuxedo that felt like a shroud. Elena Vance stood beside me. She was beautiful in a terrified porcelain doll sort of way. She didn't want this either. She was gay, a secret she had whispered to me 10 minutes ago, tears in her eyes. We were both sacrifices on the altar of our father's greed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Silas's voice boomed over the speakers. The room went silent. He stood on the grand staircase, looking like a king. "Thank you for joining us. Tonight is a night of celebration. I am proud to announce the union of two great families." My heart hammered a frantic rhythm. This was the moment. The engagement of my son, Julian, too. The lights suddenly cut out. The room gasped. Darkness swallowed the gold and velvet. Then, the massive projection screen behind Silas, intended to display photos of the happy couple, flickered to life. But it wasn't a photo of Elena and me. It was a video, grainy, black and white, but unmistakable. It was Silas, sitting in a dimly lit room, handing a briefcase to a known underworld figure. The audio crackled through the speakers, loud and clear. "The manufacturing plant in Laos. Burn it. The insurance payout will cover the debt. If the workers are inside, so be it." The gasp in the room transformed into a roar of shock. Silas froze on the stairs, his face draining of color. "Turn it off!" he screamed, his composure shattering. "Cut the power!" But the video changed. It was a stream of documents now, bank transfers, offshore accounts, emails detailing the embezzlement of the employee pension fund. It was an autopsy of his corruption, scrolling at high speed. I looked across the room. Standing near the emergency exit, illuminated by the ghostly light of the screen, was Kieran. He was wearing a waiter's uniform, a tablet in his hand. He looked up, met my eyes across the chaos, and winked. Security guards began to scramble, rushing toward the projection booth, but the damage was done. Phones were out. The press was live streaming. The empire of Silas Vane was crumbling in real time, dissolved by the truth. Silas spotted me. His eyes were wild, manic. He pointed a shaking finger at me. You ungrateful traitor." He lunged down the stairs, ignoring the murmurs of the crowd. He reached inside his jacket. "Gun!" someone screamed. Time seemed to warp, slowing down into a thick, gelatinous sludge. I saw the glint of metal. I saw the rage in my father's eyes, the realization that if he couldn't have his legacy, he would destroy it. I didn't move fast enough. I was frozen by the sheer horror of a father willing to kill his son. But someone else moved. A blur of motion tackled me from the side, knocking me to the polished floor just as the deafening crack of a gunshot echoed through the ballroom. I hit the ground hard, my breath leaving me. I looked up to see Kieran on top of me, shielding my body with his own. "Kieran!" I screamed. He winced, his face paling, but he looked down at me and grinned through clenched teeth. "Told you. We'd end him." Blood blossomed on the shoulder of his white waiter's shirt, a stark, terrifying red. Chaos erupted. Police, who had been tipped off by Kieran hours ago, swarmed the room. Silas was tackled to the ground, screaming obscenities, the gun skittering across the floor. I didn't care about Silas. I didn't care about the company. I scrambled to sit up, pressing my hands against Kieran's shoulder, trying to staunch the flow of blood. "You idiot! You jumped in front of a gun. Standard. Bodyguard protocol." Kieran wheezed, his eyes fluttering. "Besides, you still owe me dinner. I'll buy you 1,000 dinners," I promised, tears blurring my vision. "Just stay with me. Stay with me, Kieran." The paramedics were pushing through the crowd, but in that moment, in the center of the ruins of the Vane dynasty, the world narrowed down to just the two of us. The power dynamic had shifted forever. I wasn't the heir, and he wasn't the secret. I leaned down, pressing my forehead against his, heedless of the cameras, the blood, or the scandal. "I love you," I whispered fiercely. "I choose you. I will always choose you." Kieran's hand came up, shaky and stained with red, to touch my cheek. "About time. You said it out loud." 3 months later the beach house was quiet, save for the rhythmic sound of the waves crashing against the shore. It was a modest place, far away from the city, far away from the boardrooms and the indictments. I sat on the deck, watching the sunset bleed purple and orange across the horizon. The scandal of the century had dominated the news for weeks. Silas Vane was awaiting trial without bail. Vane Industries had been broken up, the assets liquidated to pay back the pensions he stole. I walked away with nothing but my name, which was exactly what I wanted. The screen door slid open. Kieran walked out, 2 mugs of tea in his hands. His arm was still in a sling, the physical therapy grueling, but he was alive. He was healing. He sat down beside me, handing me a mug. "Thinking about the past?" "Thinking about the future," I corrected, taking the tea. "I got a call from Elena today. She's in Paris with her girlfriend. She sent her thanks." Kieran chuckled, leaning his head on my shoulder. "We make a pretty good demolition crew, Vane." "We do," I agreed, resting my head on his. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was comfortable. It was whole. My father had wanted a grandkid to secure a lie. He wanted a bloodline to carry on a name that stood for nothing but greed. I looked at Kieran, the man who had bled for me, the man who had dismantled an empire to save my soul. He wanted a legacy, I murmured, watching the first stars appear. Kieran looked at me, his eyes reflecting the starlight, warm and alive. "You built your own, Julian. Freedom." I turned and kissed him, a slow, deep kiss that tasted of tea and salt air and absolute, terrifying liberty. We had shattered the plans laid out for us, broken the chains of expectation, and in the wreckage we had found the only thing that actually mattered. We didn't need a dynasty. We had each other. And that is how the heir burned the throne to save the night. If you enjoyed seeing Julian choose love over $1 billion legacy, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments. Would you betray your own family to save the person you love, even if it cost you your entire inheritance? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then.